So let's be honest, COD Zombies just kinda sucks doo-doo right now. By the time I release this video, our last two zombie games have been MW3 and Vanguard. Yeah, I know, it sucks. Before those two, we had Cold War, which was not bad by any means, but the maps were just really boring, and that story took a massive drop in quality. And before Cold War, we had Black Ops 4, which was actually pretty interesting and innovative, although at launch it was full of bugs, and most fans just didn't like the new Chaos storyline, myself included. The first three Black Ops games are all arguably great, with maybe the exception of BO2, but even then it had a very high peak, and I wanted to learn what a COD game would be like if it combined most of the zombie games together. So in this video, I came up with a concept for a Call of Duty game that is just a standalone zombie game, with no campaign or multiplayer. I thought about a name for this game, and I'd like to call it either COD Zombies or COD Ether Zombies, and I'm sure that will make sense later. But first, let's talk about which maps will be in the game. First off, we're gonna start with all the World at War maps. Nocturne and Toten is obviously staying, and I would use the Zombie Chronicles version instead of the original. And the same goes for all the other maps in World at War and Black Ops 1. I would add an optional Pack-a-Punch machine, however. That's the only thing missing that could be a nice quality of life thing, and make it so to build it, you have to complete a simple Easter egg so those who don't want it won't complain about it. I would also add Quick Revive somewhere in the spawn room, as this being the only map where you have to get it through the Wonder Fizz kinda sucks on solo. And if they already have Mule Kick on the map, then what's the harm with adding Quick Revive? Also, while we're at it, I'm just gonna mention some things that will be added to every single map, just to make it a little less repetitive. Every map will have a Wonder Fizz machine and a Gobblegum machine, just like Zombie Chronicles, and everything that was in Zombie Chronicles will remain in these versions of the maps, even the radios and Samantha Doll Easter eggs. Next up is Phurzaah. I have far less changes for it than not. All I would add is another Pack-a-Punch machine that could be obtained optionally. I'd also like it if there was a way you could explore the center of the map, even if it's not faithful to the original. Either it could be a separate variation of the map, or maybe just an optional Easter egg. Shino Numa would have the least changes. You can unlock an optional Pack-a-Punch whenever you open all four corners of the map, or do a simple Easter egg. That's it. The Reese should remain separate than the Giant, and have different Easter eggs, and not include the extra perk one on the Reese. And maybe the two should have slightly different art styles, but I struggle with figuring out how. Perhaps the Reese is not snowing or snowing less, while the Giant is more like a snowstorm going on. Now, Black Ops 1 maps are the easiest, because I would just add all the Zombie Chronicle versions with only slight changes. For Kino to Toten, give us an optional Easter egg to go on the roof and fight some sort of boss. It would be great closure after so many years of rumors, and a great way to add an Easter egg to a map that doesn't have one. 5 is a map that I know very little about, but as long as they keep the Eminem song in there and keep the crew the same, then I'll be happy. Next is Ascension, and all I would add is an optional way for less than 4 players to do the Easter egg, or at the very least a solo option, and give a perkaholic whenever you complete the Easter egg to all players. Call of the Dead is going to be a little weird, as it will be nearly impossible to faithfully remake. Getting the likeness of Danny Trejo, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Robert Englund, and Michael Rooker will definitely be a big challenge, but more importantly, including George Romero as a boss zombie that you could kill could be seen as really disrespectful now that the real George A. Romero has passed away. And it may be better off if the map is not included, or at the very least, heavily altered, with George being replaced by a generic director, and the survivor crew would probably be replaced by generic actor characters. Next up is Shangri-La, and for it, all I'd want is an option to do the Easter egg solo, or with less than 4 people. And for everyone to get a perkaholic once the last step has been completed once. After that is Moon, and I think the only thing I would really add is a way to get the wave gun, QEDs, and Gersh devices all through Easter egg steps, or just much better RNG, because that is the only real issue with the map. Everything else is just a skill issue. Now we're on Black Ops 2. This may be the hardest, as there are some changes that can make or break the map, but feel free to comment down below whether or not you agree with this. First up is transit. We definitely need to get rid of all the fog, or at the very least heavily reduce it, now that we're on much more powerful hardware. We can also get rid of a lot of the lava, or simply reduce how much damage it does and how it covers your screen. We can keep the denizens though, I don't mind them. We need to change how Pack-a-Punch works though, it's just too much work. Once you make it to town, and blow up the bank vault, and then use the turbine in the power station once, Pack-a-Punch should be unlocked permanently. Also, I'd like the Easter egg to be reworked so it can be done solo, and gives you a perkaholic once completed. Also, I would like it if the jet gun was like the shield, and could just be picked up again after a while. Or maybe it just uses some ammo, like other buildable wonder weapons, or maybe you can refill it like the rocket shields. Also, the bus should have a mountable turret somehow. That'd be cool. Also, I'd like if they could have the wonder fits across the different maps. Also, nah, Nah, I'm just fucking with you. Next up is Nuketown, and honestly all I really wanted to add is a Wonder Fizz machine, but if this map was removed, I simply would not care. It's so forgettable that I had to add this segment in after the others because I forgot it existed. Honestly, they should just add a way to do a short Easter egg that nukes the map early so everyone can play something else instead. Next up is Die Rise, and personally, this map is honestly fine for the most part. I like the Sliquifier, and the harder difficulties when traversing is kinda cool. Just let the players complete the Easter egg solo, or with less than 4 players, and give it Perkaholic. Next up is Mob the Dead, and honestly, this will be a nightmare to get faithfully remastered. You have to get the licenses of 4 fairly popular actors, and especially the late Ray Liotta, which may not be possible. Either they should replace Billy with a different actor, or they should change the actors for all 4 characters, but I could definitely see this map not happening, unfortunately. If we can get Mob back, I'd like to see Rich Toffin's head as an actual weapon, like the concept art, and it would be cool if you could add the Wonder Fizz, but there's really nothing else for such a perfect map. After Mob, it's Buried, and honestly, I don't have any major changes. Maybe make Leroy or Arthur have a sharper AI, and then make either super Easter eggs possible for however many players, so long as you have all done the previous Easter eggs too. And then maybe make the witches steal less of your money, but honestly, I wouldn't mind either way. After this is the final Black Ops 2 map, Origins, and if we're using the Zombie Chronicles version, then I don't have any real complaints. I think I might change it so you only need as many stats as you do players for the Easter egg, like the Horizon track, but I wouldn't really complain if you left it the same. Origins is just a great endurance test. Now we're on to Black Ops 3, and I'm starting to have less and less complaints, so this should be fairly easy. First up is Shadows of Evil. I would add a way to do the last step of the Easter egg solo and only requires many people that are in the game. It would also be nice if the meatballs and parasites had a higher chance of dropping the Apothecary servant part, but that's about it. I know you'd have to get the likeness of the Shadows of Evil actors, but it's definitely easier to do in comparison of Mob or Call of the Dead, and also change the flag step to make it a little less brutal. I'm sorry, but I just hate it. Next up is the Giant, and we already talked about it a little bit, so no real changes, just make it look visually different from Der Riese. After the Giant is the Horizon track, and I can officially say this is the first map that does not need a single change at all. Perfect all around, and you can make an argument that the Firebow upgrade could be changed, but I honestly don't care. Next up is Setsubo no Shima, and I must be brutally honest when I say that I have never played this map, so while I think it's important to add from a chronological perspective, I can't honestly think of a change I could make to the map and how to fix it, but I know it has issues. If you have any feedback or suggestions for Setsubo, feel free to leave it down in the comments below. After Setsubo is Gorod Krovi, and I don't really have any changes besides removing the time limit for the Perkaholic to make it more consistent with the other eggs. Also, make that one step where you have to go on the Cronorium website and plug that code in to find the tube. I don't think anyone has ever liked that, ever. Now for the final original map on Black Ops 3, Revelations, which isn't a perfect map, but there's honestly no real complaints I have, neither good or bad, so no real changes are needed. Now we're on to Black Ops 4 Zombies, which will be the last game to have maps included for my standalone Zombies game, and I'll explain why in a bit. Up first are the Chaos Storyline maps, or should I say, up first in the garbage bin. We're getting rid of all the Chaos Storyline maps because they aren't canon to the Aether timeline. You may then make the argument that I'm wrong, because the Chaos Storyline is connected to the Dark Aether story now after Vanguard Zombies. I must then say that no one likes Vanguard, and that Vanguard is connected to the Dark Aether timeline, not the Aether timeline. I know that the Dark Aether takes place after Aether, but either way, my game is not called COD Dark Aether Zombies, it's just called COD Aether Zombies. So anything after BO4 is off the menu. Now with the rest of the Aether maps to talk about, let's start with Blood of the Dead. I won't change anything too heavily, but I might get rid of the Easter egg step with Morse code and make the bird easier to find. I also want the feature that every Easter egg can be done offline with classic gobblegums or elixirs, whatever. Oh, and make the Health Retriever / Redeemer a bit more stronger. After Blood is Classified, and like 5 is just a map that I don't know much about, but I think it needs very few changes like 5. Just make the Easter egg far easier to do by making it a lower round like 75 or 115, and then give the option to either end the game and finish the egg, or keep playing for high rounds. Next up is Alpha Omega, and just like Nuketown, I don't really care about this map, and I'm only allowing it for story purposes, and that's pretty much it. Oh, and I think you should remove the function of restarting Pack-a-Punch and cleaning the air vents. Factor Toten is the last map in this game, and the last in my game, COD Aether Zombies. All I would have changed was the ending, and then tie it to a grand finale of a map about the Great War. I can't do this, however, as I'm just trying to be very faithful to pre-existing content. I guess I have no real changes, but it's still a disappointing map to end on. Now to sum it all up, we're gonna have most of the maps from World at War to Black Ops 4, with the possible removal of Call of the Dead, Mob of the Dead, and Shadows of Evil, and the definite removal of all the Chaos storyline maps. Now that we have maps out of the way, I think the second most important feature would be the perks. So let's go talk about all the perks. First off is Juggernog, and it will increase the player's health from 100 HP to 250, allowing 5 hits from normal zombies before going down. Simple enough. Next is Quick Revive, and it will halve the time needed to revive another player, and decreases the time needed to regenerate health by half. And on solo, it allows the player to revive themselves for 500 points each, but only up to 3 times. Third is Speed Cola, and it speeds up how fast you reload by 60%, and increases how fast you build barriers, craft items, hack with the hacker, throw tacticals, and swap weapons by 40%. Double Tapped Root Beer 2 is up next, as we're scrapping the original perk for, well, obvious reasons. This version, however, increases the fire rate of all weapons by 33%, and doubles the damage for all guns that shoot bullets or projectiles that are very similar to bullets, like the ray guns for example. You also get to hold 20% more ammo to make up for the fire rate. Now we're on PhD Slider. It grants immunity to all your explosive damage and fall damage and even traps. You can't flop in this game, but if you slide enough times long enough, then it can trigger a blast that kills zombies that come in direct contact with it, and knocks all other surrounding zombies temporarily. Stamina Up is our next perk, and it increases your movement speed by 7% and increases your maximum stamina by 2 to 3 times, but it depends on the map size. Deadshot Daiquiri is next, unfortunately, and it's going to be completely reworked to its Cold War version, one of the few times I'll do that in this video. Now the perk will get rid of all weapon sway, reduce weapon spread heavily, and doubles the critical damage done to an enemy's weak spot. After Deadshot is the perk with the best jingle of all time, Mule Kick. Funnily enough, I actually hate this perk with a passion, but we can use some of Cold War's ideas instead, like we did with Deadshot. It will obviously give the player a third weapon slot, and increase how many grenades and tacticals you can have by 1. It will also save your third weapon whenever you go down and buy the perk again. After Mule Kick is Tombstone, and we're combining it with Who's Who since they're practically the same thing. When the player goes down, they can choose to trigger the perk and turn into a copy of themselves with all of their guns, and if they can revive themselves in time, then they get to keep their weapons and perks. If the player goes down in this form, then they die and lose everything. If they go down and choose not to trigger the perk and then die, their loot is saved inside a tomb power-up when they respawn with a 90-second timer. This adds some risk and reward for both playstyles that feels pretty healthy. After Tombstone is one of the most underrated perks, Electric Cherry. All it does will shock nearby zombies within a certain radius when you reload. The size of this radius depends on how many bullets you have in your magazine. The less you have when reloading, the bigger the radius, and the opposite occurs when you reload a single bullet or two. After Electric Cherry is the most underutilized perk of all time, Vulturade, and it does a boatload of stuff. It gives you X-ray vision for perks, wall buys, pack-a-punch, and the mystery box. It will also make zombies drop small pouches of ammo or points, and will make other zombies drop green gas, which gives you zombie blood for as long as you stand in it. Up next is the only perk created in BO3, Widow's Wine. This perk replaces all your grenades with sticky grenades instead, which explode when hit by an enemy or boss, which makes you immune to that hit, and stuns and kills all nearby zombies. Now we're on to the Black Ops 4 perks, which aren't the best, but some of them deserve to be here, like Time Slip for example. It allows the player to both spin the mystery box and pack-a-punch much faster, and additionally, it speeds up the animation for drinking perks, using gobblegum, and allows you to teleport and fast travel just slightly faster. After Time Slip is Ethereal Razor. This perk increases your melee speed, range, and damage, and your offhand swipe instantly kills all zombies within a certain range, but there's a cooldown for 20 seconds or so every time. Now, for Dying Wish, it will trigger whenever you would go down, and instead triggers Berserk mode, making you invincible and deal more damage for a short amount of time, and then reduces your health to 1 and makes you lose the perk. Stone Cold Stronghold is up next, and it's fairly simple. After standing in place for a few seconds, you generate a small blue circle, and in this circle you deal more damage, take less damage, and your health regenerates slightly faster. Next is Victorious Tortoise, which makes your shield block damage from any direction when held, and your shield explodes when broken, killing all nearby zombies. Now we're on Bandolier Bandit, which will simply double the ammo stock of all weapons, and replenish your stowed weapons magazine after 15 seconds. The second to last perk will be Zombshell, which has a small chance to create a small containment field after killing a zombie. All zombies near the containment field will be slowed and take more damage. The last perk in my game, COD for Zombies, will be Blaze Phase, which is also the greatest perk ever made in all of history. Whenever the player crouches, they build up a charge for the perk. After fully charging up the perk, the player can uncrouch to charge forward in a straight line, which kills or knocks all zombies you come in contact with. Now that we've gone over all the perks, you must be asking a certain question. How in the hell am I going to fit 20 perks into every map? The answer is relatively simple, which is that I won't. Every perk that was on the original version of a map will remain in the same location with no real exception besides Black Ops 4, which did not have traditional perk machines. For Black Ops 4, Brew, Cola, Soda, and Tonic will be replaced with Quick Revive, Juggernog, Speed Cola, and Double Tap 2, respectively. Now to get back on track with the original question, I still want to add every single perk in the game to every single map. I plan on doing this through the use of the Wonder Fizz, which will also be inspired by Cold War system, but not exactly. If a perk was not on the original version of that map, then you can go to the Wonder Fizz vending machine and pick a perk from there, and each perk will have their own respective price. The twist, however, is that there's only 5 perks from the Wonder Fizz at a time, and the selection is random. At the start of a new round, the selection changes again, and the same perks will never appear twice. This leads to more variation and luck in the maps, and also makes it so the player can't just pick the 4 meta perks they want and completely forget about the rest, but also assures the player that they still have the essentials like Quick Revive and Jug at the same place every time. I also have another idea, but it's something I like a little less. Instead of the Wonder Fizz having pretty much everything for all the maps, all the Black Ops 4 perks are limited to the maps from that game, since they're fairly niche, and you could remove some perks from the older games to make the perk count fairly reasonable. All the other perks could just be added seamlessly to the other maps, but I could see that getting pretty chaotic, so not exactly something I support, but it's food for thought. Alright, now that we've talked about all the perks, let's talk about something that's fairly important, and that's the weapons and wonder weapons. Alright, to be completely honest, I'm no gun nut, and I've never considered the weapons of COD Zombies to be that important, ironically enough. All I know is that traditional modern guns definitely fit the aesthetic for zombies, and I think Black Ops 3 and 4 really ruined that aesthetic due to their futuristic and unrealistic guns. I personally think that the futuristic technology in zombies is fine, as it's a sci-fi adjacent series and it can be justified, but I think it fits far better as wonder weapons than traditional guns. That's why I'm suggesting that all the guns in my game, COD for Zombies, will be predominantly from Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2. The guns from 3 and 4 are nearly identical, and they have similar versions to their older counterparts. So in this game, if there are any similar versions of a pre-existing gun, the older version will be the only version that exists. So the M14 would replace the Shiva, for example. If there's a gun from BO3 or 4 that doesn't have an original counterpart, then that is a fair opportunity for it to appear in the game, either as a wall buy or from the box. Now outside of regular weapons, we need to talk about the wonder weapons, the fun stuff. I really want to add every single wonder weapon to every single map, but while that would be extremely fun, it would not be good game design. So here's my list for every wonder weapon that will appear in every, or most, map in the game. The ray gun just has to be in this game, why wouldn't it be? It's iconic, and we're keeping the splash damage, just get PhD if it bothers you. Next, it's the Wonder Wap. This gun has not appeared in enough maps for seemingly no reason, but I think it's iconic enough to be here, and it feels generic enough to be on any map. Sure, it was a little too strong sometimes, but it's pretty much just Deadwire, the weapon. Next, I must say that I simply love monkey bombs. Obviously, they're staying, and they should be in every map unless they have their own version of the bombs. Now for the Thunder Gun, I must admit that I love this bad boy, and I think most people agree with that, as it's objectively the strongest wonder weapon for high rounds. The only problem is that if paired with other strong wonder weapons, it would make the game far too easy, so it won't be on Origins or any of the Black Ops 3 maps. Let me be clear, the Winter's Howl sucks doo-doo, and it's not good at all, but it's generic enough to fit in with other maps. Honestly, I think the Gersh devices are pretty cool, and should be on at least all the Optimus crew maps, and possibly Primus, but a little less likely. Now the Scavenger is a pretty interesting weapon, as it's a little weird to use, but it's still fairly powerful, so we're keeping it on all the maps, since Call of the Dead already has another wonder weapon that fits its aesthetic far more. Mark II is surprisingly the only wonder weapon from BO2 that really deserves to be a generic wonder weapon, as it's still very iconic and beloved by fans, and fits in visually with the ray gun, and is only slightly more powerful. The Apothicon Servant is strange, as it mainly fits with Shadows of Evil only, but since it was also included on Revelations, I'll let it slide, but it can only show up on BL3 maps for lore reasons, and it's also why the Thunder Gun won't show up, as the two are nearly identical in both power and mechanic. To make the total amount of wonder weapons a nice number, my final generic wonder weapons are the Lil Arnies, but they'll only be on the other BL3 maps for lore reasons, just like the Apothicon Servant. Now all the other wonder weapons that I didn't mention will still show up, don't get me wrong, I just thought that it would personally be a little out of place to add them to all maps, as they feel better as map exclusives, and keeps all of the experience of all the maps a little more unique. And now speaking of unique things, let's finish this video off with the most unique addition to this game, being the extra game modes. Remember when Treyarch added new game modes to COD Zombies? Yeah, me neither. But there's still a bunch that are pretty cool, so while I doubt Treyarch would add any of these back, it's a fun what if at the very least. My first pick would have to be Grief, as it deserves so much more love. It would be 2 teams of up to 8 players as they try to survive and, more importantly, outlive the other team. The other teams can't fight directly, but they can annoy each other, say by luring zombies to you, pushing you a certain direction, not buying the doors that you wanted open, and just other little things. But they can also find zombie flesh, which can be picked up and thrown at the other team to make zombies focus on them. Once an entire team goes down and at least one person on the other team survives that round, then they win. If both teams are killed by the end of the round, then that round will restart. I think I would get rid of the Pack-a-Punch and definitely the Wonder Fizz, but everything else is fair game. The maps would be fairly limited, but still plentiful from each of the games. The maps I would include are Nocturne Toten, Verrucht, Shino Numa, Kino der Toten, 5, Shangri-La, Moon, Town, Nuketown, Buried, The Giant, Derisendrack, Blood of the Dead, and Tag der Toten. Obviously, each map will have their size reduced fairly heavily to make the game mode much more fast-paced. Turned is the next game mode I'll include, and it will feature all the maps mentioned in Grief. For those who don't know what this mode is, it is similar to Grief, where the players are against each other, but with the twist that one person is a human, and that the other 3 players are zombies. At the start of a round, all players are zombies, and the first one to find a cure is turned into a human while the rest stay as zombies. The human must then kill the zombie players to get points, and must play a reverse gun game where each kill the human gets gives them a weaker and weaker gun until they must use a pistol until turned by a zombie. The zombie players must then kill the human to turn into a human themselves. Each side will also have power-ups that hurt the other team, like a nuke freezing and teleporting the zombies, but a zombie nuke would turn the human into a zombie immediately. Everyone will be competing to be the human for the longest and get the most kills as a human in order to win the round after 6 minutes, with the option to pick how many rounds you want to play. Now the last game mode that needs to be added is Zombie Rush from Black Ops 4. Rush is the game mode I've played the least in Zombies, but it has potential, which is why it will be in all the maps, even if they have to be slightly changed for it to make sense. For those who don't know, Zombie Rush is a game mode where 4 players are competing against each other to score the most points before everyone dies. The twist is that each player is forced to survive a small area of the map and get as many points as possible, where you get a point streak for the longer you go without getting hit. After a certain time limit, the areas will change for the player, and they are assigned to a new area and must get to the new area in time, or else they'll start taking damage until they die. Players have 3 lives at first, but have a random chance of getting an extra life. An important twist for this mode is that everything you can buy in normal zombies is free, including the mystery box and Pack-a-Punch, but there is a limit of how many times you can use it per rush. In order to win the game, all players must run out of lives first, and then the player who scored the most points wins. Now, you may think I'm done with all of the game modes, but I have one last surprise for you. But allow me to set the scene first with my official, unofficial trailer.
Was stumbling around in total darkness part of plan?
You give us the fire, we'll give them hell.
Do not speak so lightly of hell.
Easy, Tech. I didn't mean the real thing.
Gentlemen, we are here. Gentlemen, welcome to Fortnite.
My last addition to my COD Ether zombies would be Fortnite mode, or a zombies battle royale, but I think Fortnite mode sounds a bit better. How the game would work is that you would enter a 100-man battle royale, similar to Warzone, but you are not able to fight any other player whatsoever. Instead, you will be surrounded by zombies at every corner and must quickly find weapons and tacticals to fight them off while the 115 storm closes in on you and doesn't stop growing until the entire map is covered, dealing damage to any player who stands in it. Players will not be able to regenerate their health naturally, but they can find heals inside chests and can find armor to reduce the amount of damage taken. There are no perk machines, and the mystery box doesn't show up, but you can find pack-a-punch machines scattered around, but only one gun per player is allowed in each machine. Also, as the storm progresses, more and more zombies will spawn, and eventually mini-bosses will spawn too, including Hellhounds, Nova 6 crawlers, Brutus, Panther Soldats, Margwas, Parasites, Meatballs, and even the damn Manglers are all trying to attack you. In order to kill the other players, you will have to lure zombies into their direction by shooting the player enough times. This will get the zombies to focus on them temporarily, but some zombies will focus on anyone regardless. Also, Richtofen and Marlton can hit the gritty. But yeah, alright, if you made it this far into the video, then you might be wondering about certain things like gobblegums and liquid divinium and all that. Truth be told, I think Black Ops 6 is doing it right with the chance of getting a free gobblegum every round and giving you the ability to make custom decks. Also, all the gobblegums from BO3 will be in COD for zombies. I also know that this is unrealistic since it wouldn't make Activision billions of dollars. But honestly, this was more for us zombie fans, so I'm just happy to talk about something I'm pretty passionate about. But truth be told, they would make $1 billion from COD Zombies Ether Fortnite mode if they add a zombie Snoop Dogg skin and just make gobblegums pay to win again. Anyways, that was my video on a hypothetical standalone COD Zombies game. I hope you all liked it very much, and this video took a while to make, so it would mean a lot to me if you press the like button and subscribe, but only if you want to, of course, and if you don't, that's fine. And if you dislike the video, then gladly feel free to dislike it, as that teaches me how to improve my content for the better next time. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.